Texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply.
Hey, Dan, how you doing? Haven't seen you around the gym for a while.
Yeah, I've really fallen off. Since I turned 40, I just don't get the results I used to get.
Could be lower testosterone.
Lower T?
Yeah, I went through it a while back. Once you hit 40, your body has less free testosterone. I got Nugenix Total T, and it's made a huge difference for me.
I've seen that ad on TV. Is it for real?
Oh, yeah. The key ingredient is something called Tesnor, which helps boost free and total testosterone levels to help you trim up and stay lean.
And it's made a difference for you?
Man, I feel like I'm in my 20s again, at work, in the gym, and in the bedroom.
Are they still giving out complimentary bottles for people to try it for themselves?
Yeah, you just need to send them a text.
Text STAY to 321-321 right now for your complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T, the #1 selling testosterone booster at GNC. Plus, text now and we'll include a bottle of Nugenix Thermo, our most powerful.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you guys are having a great day. Happy Friday. Oh, man. Big weekend planned ahead. But before I really start the show, I have to make a quick apology. I have to apologize to my parents for all the times I left my lunchbox or something important at home after they dropped me off at school. I woke up this morning, was, getting ready, to come into work. And my wife texted me. She's a teacher. And she just goes, "Hey, I left something at home that I needed to teach today. Can you drop it off?" Threw off my whole morning. So Mom, Dad, I am sorry for every time that I did that. I'm also taking suggestions on where I should take my wife for our 1-year anniversary, which is coming up in like 25 days. I've got a loose plan, but I'm willing to deviate from the plan if somebody comes to me with something a little bit better. So head over to YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, jump in the chat, throw your suggestions my way. If you don't want to do that, you can also text our text line at 317-228-1430. Any and all recommendations are greatly appreciated. Now, something that would have been greatly appreciated would have been, I don't know, maybe Chris Ballard signing Justin Simmons. But no, for whatever reason, the Colts just couldn't afford him. Just ignore the fact that they have like somewhere between $24 and $25 million in cap space available. Just, ignore that part. No, Justin Simmons, just too expensive, not good enough. I don't know what it is. But Justin Simmons, one of the 10 best safeties in the NFL, one of the 10 best players at the position that the Colts are in desperate need of addressing, free safety. The Colts didn't bring him up here to Indy, didn't give him any sort of sales pitch. They're just like, no. Atlanta Falcons, you guys can have him. Justin Simmons, stud free safety who played for the Broncos last year, only 27 years old. He signed a 1-year, $8 million deal with the Atlanta Falcons yesterday, and I tweeted about it. I want to make it clear, I am not at all surprised by this. I think that we all knew that this was what was going to happen. I know Zach Hicks and I had talked about it ad nauseum. Not surprised by this, but I am disappointed, okay? Like, I want for Chris Ballard to deviate from his ways, to go out and to be aggressive in free agency. I want him to be aggressive in going out and acquiring talent, because that's how you win, by acquiring good players. Believe it or not, the team that has the better players usually wins. That's just something that I've noticed in every sport, especially the NFL, though. And I'm sitting here and I'm looking at this contract. It's like 1 year, $8 million. Like, really? The Colts couldn't top that? Chris Ballard couldn't have called him and been like, hey, man, I'll do 1 year for $10 million. Seriously. Like, they have somewhere between $24 and $25 million in cap space available. Why aren't they prioritizing spending money towards winning? That's what they should be doing. They should prioritize spending their money on winning. And when we look at this secondary, even though I will say all the reports from yesterday are that the secondary played decently well in their joint practice with the Cardinals, albeit they played in a monsoon. I'll get into that a little bit more later. But I don't understand why there's not why winning isn't a priority here in Indy. Okay, and I'm sitting back and I'm looking at the Atlanta Falcons, and they're doing the exact thing that I have preached relentlessly, I think really since I started being on the air here. Through aggressiveness, the Atlanta Falcons are so much better. Okay, they went out, they traded a third-round pick for 31-year-old Matthew Judon, who still got some stuff left in the tank, improved their defensive line immediately, and then yesterday, they go out and they sign one of the best safeties in the NFL in Justin Simmons. Aggressiveness is the way forward. If you want to get better, it's not through sitting on your hands and doing nothing and crossing your fingers and hoping that the guy that you drafted 3 years ago ends up being good. That is not the way forward. That is not how you improve your football team. Just look at the Atlanta Falcons. They were aggressive in the offseason. They're like, you know what? We're sick of losing. Let's go get Kirk Cousins because we've had a major issue in our quarterback room for a long time. So they go out, they bring in Kirk Cousins, right? And they've, surrounded him with all these weapons, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts. They're like, okay, good. Offense figured out. We have a good quarterback now. The offensive line is going to be solid. We like our weapons. What do we need on defense? Oh, we need an edge rusher because we decided to draft Michael Penix instead of an edge rusher in the draft. Oh, Matthew Judon's available. Let's go get him. He only costs a third-round pick. Look, I don't know who the Patriots are going to draft with that third-round pick. What I'm willing to bet, though, is that Matthew Judon is better than whoever they draft with that third-round selection. They're sitting around, they're like, how can we get better? Right? That's the question that general managers and coaches, I think, should ask themselves every single day. How can we get better? Okay? And if you're a general manager, the answer is usually through going and getting better players. And the people in Atlanta clearly understand that, and they go out and they sign Justin Simmons. All the while, Chris Ballard's just like, I think I'm going to hang out here. Watch some Nick Cross highlights. I don't think there are any Nick Cross highlights. I don't think those exist. Seriously. And, the frustrating part of all of this is that the Colts are stuck with Chris Ballard for the next at least 3 or 4 years. Okay? You think these last 8 years have been bad. We got 3 more years of it coming. Okay, if the Colts don't make the playoffs this year, Chris Ballard's not going anywhere. He's not going anywhere. Okay? Chris Ballard's tenure here in Indianapolis is directly tied to Anthony Richardson. Okay, they are tied together at the hip. If Anthony Richardson's good, okay, if he's good enough to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, Chris Ballard's going to be around for a long time. Okay, if he's bad, then he'll be gone along with Anthony Richardson, and they'll bring in a new general manager, and then they'll draft a new quarterback, and then we're starting all over again. Okay, and that's an issue for me. That's an issue for you because I want the Colts to be good, and the way to do it is to be aggressive. Okay, that's how you improve your roster. Look around the AFC South. The Colts are about to get left in the dust. It may not happen this year, but down the road, it's going to happen because the Titans, their new general manager, guess what he is? Super, ultra aggressive. Hey, we have a young quarterback. We should probably surround him with as much talent as we can on both sides of the ball. All right, so let's go sign DeAndre Hopkins. Let's go sign Calvin Ridley. Okay, let's go and trade for L'Jarius Sneed, one of the best corners in the NFL. On and on and on. Let's go get good players. Jacksonville, they're sitting down there. They're like, you know what? We just put a bunch of money into, Trevor Lawrence. He's our guy for the future. Let's help him out. Let's get him some good players. Let's spend our first-round pick on a wide receiver. Let's bring in Gabe Davis, okay, who's had some success in Buffalo. Let's bring in Eric Armstead, shore up this pass rush. Okay, like they're bringing in these legitimately good players, and I'm gonna discuss all this coming up at 11 o'clock with Josh Edwards of CBS Sports. Cannot wait to have him on. But that is the way forward. If you want to improve and you're a general manager, you have to be willing to go out and get good players, not high upside players, not unknown commodities, because that's what the NFL draft really is. You're rolling the dice every time that you draft someone. And yeah, sure, from time to time, a prospect comes along and they're can't miss. You know that they're going to be good. For example, Marvin Harrison Jr. But guess what? Those guys are off the board really quickly. Right? And then from that point on, once you get past pick 10, it's a crapshoot. No one knows what they're getting. We have an idea, right? And we sit back and, I watch film, you watch film, Ballard and all those guys, they watch film. And then you form your opinion. You're like, I think, keyword there is think, I think this guy is going to be good. And sometimes you're right, and sometimes you're wrong. Drafting players is hard. That's why I preach and push for trades and free agent signings. Because known commodities are better than unknown commodities. They just are. Like I said, a few minutes ago, the Patriots traded Matthew Judon, a good edge rusher, to the Atlanta Falcons for a third-round pick. The chances that third-round pick is better than Matthew Judon aren't very high. They aren't. And it's just frustrating to sit back and watch the Colts continue to do things that only the Colts would do, and that's sit on their hands and not do really much of anything. And, they're going to roll with their guys, and that's fine. They can do that, I guess. I just think that it's pretty clearly a mistake, especially when you look at the back end of that secondary. I want to switch gears now. I want to move over to Major League Baseball. They proposed a new rule yesterday. It's got people all up in arms. People are not super upset about it, but I would definitely say that people don't like it. Major League Baseball is looking at making it a requirement for starting pitchers to throw at least 6 innings unless they give up 4 or more runs, exceed 100 pitches or get hurt. I think their heart's in the right place, but I think that they're going about it the wrong way. I like the idea of making starting pitchers throw more because, let's be honest, starting pitchers are stars in Major League Baseball. Clayton Kershaw, star for a long time. Max Scherzer, star for a long time. Who's the newest star in Major League Baseball? Oh, starting pitcher, Paul Skeens. Okay, like there's real opportunity to make those guys legitimate stars. And if I was Major League Baseball, I would do everything I could to make them stars because you get to see them, for more than just 3 at-bats throughout a Major League Baseball game. So I understand why Major League Baseball wants these starting pitchers to throw longer. I get it. Okay, the average length of a start for Major League Baseball pitcher this year is 5 1/3 innings. That's not very good. It needs to be longer. I completely agree with that premise. But making them do it is not the right way to do it. It's not right. That's not the right way to go about this. Okay, the 6-inning requirement, it's too constrictive. Okay, when you make somebody do something, they aren't going to like it. Okay, right? And you're going to get a ton of pushback, and no one's going to like you, and that's not what you want. So if I was Major League Baseball, I would follow the NBA's lead. The NBA this year, they sat back and they looked at load management. And they're like, this is an issue. Okay, we've asked guys to play, on nationally televised games. They don't want to listen to us. We've asked guys to play more on the road. Nope, they don't want to do it. So the NBA said, okay, that's fine. You don't want to do what we're asking you. So we're going to incentivize you to do what we're asking you to do. So instead of saying every NBA player has to do this or they have to do that, instead, the NBA was like, look, you have to play 65 games to qualify for awards. You don't have to play 65 games, but we all know that you would like the accolade of being named first team All-NBA. We all know that you would like the accolade of being named first team All-Defense or potentially winning the MVP or Defensive Player of the Year. The NBA sat back and they're like, we know that you want this, and in order to get it, you have to play 65 games. And, the NBA players, they whined and they moaned and they groaned about it like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have to do my job. So upset. But guess what? A lot of them did it. A lot of them fell in line because awards matter to players. Major League Baseball should do the exact same thing with pitchers. Instead of saying you have to pitch 6 innings every time that you throw, make there an inning requirement to qualify to win awards like the Cy Young. Right? Unless you throw 225 innings, like whatever you want the count to be. You have to throw, 225 innings, 200 innings, 250 innings, whatever you want it to be. You have to throw this many innings in order to qualify to potentially win the Cy Young and other awards. That is the solution for Major League Baseball. Don't make it a requirement. If you make it a requirement, no one's going to like it. It's going to just upset everybody. Okay? Incentivize them. Okay? Don't make them do it. Incentivize them to do so. Things will go over much smoother that way. Okay? Because I do think that baseball fans want this. I do think that baseball fans want to see great starting pitching go more than just 5 1/3 innings. Okay, I think baseball fans want to watch their favorite starting pitcher go into the 8th inning, right? And he's throwing a one-hitter, and he's absolutely shoving. I think baseball fans want to – I know I want to see that. I love watching a pitcher dominate, right? And they're throwing that slider that's breaking like 19 inches. You sit there, you watch it, and you're like, you couldn't hit that with an oar, It's fun. It's exciting. It's entertaining. And I understand baseball wanting for this to kind of be more of a thing where starting pitchers pitch more, right? But you can't make them do it, okay? That is not the right answer. Incentivize them. Say, okay, hey, you don't have to do it. But if you don't, you can't win, the Cy Young or whatever other award you want to throw out there. Follow the NBA's lead on this. Okay, it'll go over much, much smoother. Something that was not very smooth yesterday was the weather during the Colts and Cardinals joint practice. I've got audio from that, how that practice went, everything, all that fun stuff coming your way here in 4 minutes.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Head over to YouTube, search for Indy's Sports Tickets, subscribe, join the live stream. I am taking suggestions for what my wife and I should do for our first anniversary coming up, 25 days away, trying to be proactive and thinking about this. I've got a loose idea of what we're going to do, but I'm more than willing to deviate from the plan. So feel free to drop some suggestions in there. So, oh man, speaking of deviating from the plan, monsoon yesterday at Colts practice with the Cardinals. I mean, just tons and tons of rain. I was out in the rain yesterday too. I went to a middle school football game. And my wife was like, hey, some of my former students are playing. Will you go with me? I was like, I guess. And then, we went out, watched this middle school football game, and it was, it was definitely middle school football. Definitely not the level of football that was going on up in Westfield yesterday. And it's tough to play crisp offense in the rain. And so with, the crappy weather and, all the videos that you see, I mean, it's absolutely pouring up there. And despite the crappy weather, despite, the rain and the slick ball and all those things, it seems like the Colts still had a pretty good offensive day, especially in terms of throwing the football based off of what head coach Shane Steichen had to say after the practice.
It was good. I mean, early on, obviously, it was raining pretty good. So I think we picked it up as it went on. I really liked the way we finished practice in the 2-minute period, both offensively and defensively. Like I said, our guys were competing like crazy. They treated it like a game. That's what you got to do. So it was really good.
Shane Steichen there talking about how well the offense looked, especially the passing game, despite the rain. And I've been thinking about, just the Colts and Anthony Richardson. And when the rain was happening, I was like, this isn't a super big deal because the Colts do play in a dome. And if it ever rains, they'll just, close that thing up. But I will say that this is one of the benefits to having a big, strong-armed quarterback. When it comes to Anthony Richardson, people talk about the tools all the time, okay? And I get it, right? They drafted Anthony Richardson with the hope of developing him into, a franchise quarterback because I don't think that, he's not Caleb Williams who's going to walk into the league from day one and have success. Like that's not who Anthony Richardson is, and that's fine. Okay, so he has to have some development. But I will say the tools that he has are really nice for when it rains. Okay, when it's raining or snowing or sleeting or whatever, or windy, Anthony Richardson is going to have the arm strength to throw the ball through the wind, through the rain, through the snow, through the sleet, whatever it is. Okay, this is one of the advantages of having a big, strong-armed quarterback. They just tend to not be impacted as much by the weather, whereas Kyler Murray yesterday struggled a little bit. Okay, all the reports say that the Colts defense had a pretty good day yesterday. The secondary had a decently good day. And I bet that in part of it is because the weather probably helped him out. And the other thing on Richardson, when it comes to, throwing the ball in crappy weather, he has huge hands. Okay, like 10.5 inches. That's the width of his hand from pinky to thumb. And if you're like, Jonathan, I don't really know what that means. The NFL average size of a quarterback's hand is about 9.5 inches. Okay, so Anthony Richardson having, slightly bigger hands helps him grip the ball and throw the ball when it's rainy and wet, which makes me feel good for when the Colts go to Green Bay in week 2, right? If, it's wet, like he should be fine in terms of his ability to still throw the football. Okay, and, like Steichen said there in that clip, they had a pretty good offensive day yesterday in terms of throwing the ball. And a large part of that is obviously Anthony Richardson, right? Like this is back-to-back good days at practice despite, or against not the Colts defense, right? Which is a good thing. Like that's an important thing. And part of that is the feel that he has for the game. After the practice, Shane Steichen was asked about Anthony Richardson and just the different things that have really kind of stuck out to him throughout training camp and the things that he's really succeeded in. And Shane Steichen had this to say about Anthony Richardson.
I think the biggest thing is like the best players I've been around, they got a natural feel. You know what I mean? There's guys sometimes that are straight robots, and it's like, well, coach, you told me to look here. I was like, yeah, I know I told you to look here, but the guy's open over there too. Like, and those guys that see that stuff, I think that's what makes those guys special. And he's been doing a lot of those things so far in camp. So I'm excited for the season for him.
Anthony Richardson has some feel. That's awesome. I love to hear that. I think feel shows an important attribute that every successful quarterback has. It shows self-confidence. Right? It shows a confidence in the ability to make a play, to deviate from, whatever the plan is. It's like, oh, I'm supposed to hit this in route, but oh, hey, this other guy's wide open right now. Let me throw the ball to him instead. And that sounds like a simple, common sense thing, but it's not. Okay, like I played, baseball, obviously slightly different, but like I played baseball with guys in college who, just absolute robots, like no feel whatsoever. And it's kind of tough to describe what feel is, but it is an important thing for quarterbacks to have. And I also think that Richardson being willing to go off the script and deviate a little bit from what Shane Steichen has, said, hey, we're looking for this route. Richardson being willing to work off of that, I think shows us that Shane Steichen has a lot of faith in him and that Anthony Richardson knows that. I think that we see guys play like robots when they don't have confidence instilled in them from their head coach. And it seems like Steichen has really kind of instilled confidence in Richardson to let him know that, hey, man, like you can deviate from whatever I'm saying from time to time. And I was sitting down and I was really struggling to figure out, like, how do I describe feel? Because it's not an easy thing to describe. It's kind of like having the it factor. It's like you don't really know what the it factor is, but when someone has it, you know it. And so I was like, geez, how do I describe this? And then, Anthony Richardson was asked about a specific play, and I think it perfectly describes what Shane Steichen was talking about in that clip. So here's Anthony Richardson breaking down a play, demonstrating the feel that he has.
All right. So, we were tempo, obviously. Went 2x2. Had some deep routes, and necessarily I'm supposed to work to the boundary because it's easier to throw. And then the timing on the clock, you want to make sure you can get it, enough space and so you can get out of bounds. But I just looked to the left and I seen AD in the slot, and I just seen a bunch of green grass, and I was like, all right, throw the ball to him, and it worked.
That was Anthony Richardson breaking down an important play that they had late in practice that set up a touchdown, right? Where he came out and, he broke it down, I think, really well. He was supposed to look towards the sideline. And then, he looked toward the sideline. He's like, I don't know. And then he looked at, A.D. Mitchell. He's like, oh, there's a bunch of green grass there. Let me just throw it there instead. Okay. Whereas I think you'd see some other quarterbacks who haven't been quite as successful in the NFL be like, no, like I'm supposed to go to the boundary. Let me see if I can fit this in there. Okay. So having the feel, having the willingness to deviate from the plan is important. And we're going to see him hopefully show off his feel throughout the season. And hopefully that continues to happen. After the practice, Shane Steichen came to the podium and he said something that we were all expecting. The starters will not play on Saturday, and Joe Flacco will not play on Saturday. So get ready to watch Sam Ehlinger, get ready to watch these backups, all of that fun stuff. I'm interested to see what the backups look like. I'm assuming that the Cardinals are probably going to do the same thing. Steichen in his comment just briefly mentioned that, the starters got all the work that they needed this week, so they'll watch film and do all those things, and then he'll let us know early next week what the plan is for the Thursday night game against the Cincinnati Bengals, the final tune-up game. Cannot wait for that. Hopefully, Chris Ballard wasn't lying to us. Hopefully, we do get to see Anthony Richardson for a full half next week on Thursday. And, we hear a lot of talk around Indianapolis about Anthony Richardson and just how big and athletic he is. And it's to a point where it's like, can we here in Indianapolis talk about anything else? And I think that we oftentimes forget that like other teams view Anthony Richardson in a very similar fashion. And Arizona Cardinals head coach Jonathan Gannon was asked about his early impressions of Anthony Richardson, and here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I told Shane it was the first time I ever was up on him. You know what I mean? And he's a big dude. You know, he's a big dude. But obviously the arm strength is there. You know, he can get it out of his hand quick. You saw him tuck and run the one, and he was into the secondary before you blinked your eye. So he's got a very bright future, especially getting coached up by the guys he's got coaching him up.
That was Cardinals head coach Jonathan Gannon there talking about Anthony Richardson, and he played all the hits there. Anthony Richardson's really big. Anthony Richardson's really fast. Anthony Richardson has a really big arm. All those things. He played all the hits, but I don't know what it is. It's different coming from your competition. Okay, because he doesn't have to say that. He doesn't. Those aren't his guys. He very easily could have, walked up to the podium and been like, yeah, he's fine. I think he'll have a future. I don't really know. But no, instead, Jonathan Gannon decided to elaborate a little bit. I think he's got a bright future. When he, took off on that scramble, he was in the secondary in a blink of an eye. Like, I know that all these comments don't exactly mean everything, but they are very nice to hear. And I'm going to talk with Josh Edwards of CBS Sports coming up 11 o'clock, top of the hour. He's got Anthony Richardson on his, 2024 all breakout team. He's expecting big things from Anthony Richardson. Going to talk to him about that. And Jonathan Gannon hit on, I think, a large reason why people are expecting big things from Anthony Richardson. It's because of Shane Steichen. Okay, Shane Steichen clearly has the respect of a lot of people, not only in the media, but also in the coaching world. Jonathan Gannon there at the end saying that part of why Anthony Richardson has a bright future is because Shane Steichen is his head coach, and because Shane Steichen is going to figure out ways to have him produce. And I don't think it's going to matter if it's raining or sunshine and rainbows. Either way, I think we're going to see Anthony Richardson find some success this year. The question is whether or not it will be enough for this team to make the playoffs. I'm very intrigued to see what they do defensively coming up in these, preseason games, especially next Thursday, where it seems like the starters are going to play a lot more against a good Cincinnati Bengals team, a Cincinnati Bengals team that has Super Bowl aspirations. What are they going to look like on the defensive side of the ball? I have faith and confidence in the offense. I know that the defense played well yesterday, but how much of that has to do with the weather? That is kind of my overarching question. Okay. Yes, the offense played well yesterday. Not surprised by that because Shane Steichen is the head coach and Shane Steichen is the play caller. But the defense played well. How much of that was because of the weather? And are they going to be able to play well tomorrow? Seriously, the offense, I'm not worried about. Okay, I know that the offense is what we're all focused on because there's a new young quarterback in the building, and Adonai Mitchell's really explosive, and people are excited about him. But the question for the Colts team this year isn't about the offense. They're going to be fine. They had the 11th best scoring offense in the NFL last year. They were 15th in DVOA. They're going to be fine on the offensive side of the ball. The question is, how are they going to look defensively? Because there's a major lack of talent out there, and playing all these young guys, I still very firmly believe that the Colts are going to get off to a rough start this year because there's a young quarterback who hasn't played a ton of football, and it's a young secondary. The secondary is incredibly young, and it may be a thing where the Colts start 1-3, and then from that point on, they look like a good football team. But because they went 1-3 to start, they don't make the playoffs. I think that is a real outcome for the Colts heading into this next season, and that's just not good enough. Okay, I still can't believe that Chris Ballard. No, I can believe that Chris Ballard went out and didn't go out and didn't sign Justin Simmons, but I'm going to continue to pound the table. It was a huge mistake. It was, and it's going to continue to bother me for, probably the next couple of days because I want to see this Colts team succeed. But it's hard to do that when your general manager just continues to get in the way, which brings me to Funless Friday. For Funless Friday today, I'm doing characteristics that the Colts need to look for in their next general manager because Chris Ballard's not going to be here for forever. And look, if the Colts want long-term success, it starts at the top. And, it's owner, general manager. So your general manager has to be better than what Chris Ballard has been. I've got that list for you when we come back here in 4 minutes.
More winners, more often. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Head over to YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket. Subscribe, join the live chat. Join in on the conversation. I'm taking recommendations for what I should do with my wife on our 1-year anniversary, which is coming up in 25 days. Can't wait for it. Chad has suggested a restaurant. I have no idea how to pronounce it, but Bonji's Tavern, I guess that's what it's called. So we'll see. We'll see. I have to get our approval on it. We'll see what winds up happening. But Funless Friday, one of the best parts about Fridays is I get to do this super awesome, what's usually really fun list. I got to be honest, this one not as fun as the other ones. Okay, but I got to be honest, I'm a little pressed about Chris Ballard not getting Justin Simmons. I'm not surprised, but it does bother me. So for today's Fun List Friday, I have decided to highlight the characteristics that the Colts need to look for in their next general manager. Okay, because look, I do believe that Chris Ballard's tenure here in Indianapolis is directly tied to Anthony Richardson. Okay, if Anthony Richardson succeeds, then we got a lot more Chris Ballard coming our way. Chris Ballard does not succeed, then bye-bye Chris Ballard. We're bringing somebody new in. And either way, like at some point, Chris Ballard will no longer be the Colts general manager. Okay, maybe that's in 3 years. Maybe it's in a decade. Either way, we don't know. And so I've taken the time to highlight the 5 things that I think the Colts need to look for. The first thing that I think any person in leadership has to do or has to be able to do is they have to have the ability to hold themselves and everyone else in the building accountable. Okay, like you have to ensure that people do their jobs, right? And if they don't do their job, then there has to be some sort of consequence for that. Okay, I'll never forget my freshman year at Henderson State. I'm playing baseball. First day of fall workouts happens. You know, because of NCAA rules, coaches aren't allowed to be there. So it was like a player-led thing. All the seniors led it. And we did the same thing every single year. So I remember the summer before I showed up on campus, I'm texting guys that, you know, were going to be sophomores, juniors, seniors. And I'm like, what's the thing that I need to be ready for? And everyone's response was the ready mile. I'm like, okay, what is that? I don't know what that means. So essentially you run. So, you know, if you go out to your local track, 4 laps around the track is a mile. But the ready mile is, you know, you run the curved parts of the track. And then instead of running, you know, the straight part, you climb, you run the bleachers instead. So up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, down, curve, other bleachers, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, curve throughout the entire thing. And you do it 4 times. It's terrible. Okay. You want to burn a bunch of calories and hate yourself? Run the ready mile. It's horrendously bad. And they're like, hey, we start at 6 a.m. And so I have this uncanny ability to where if I have to, like I can just tell myself the night before, like, hey, man, you need to wake up at 5:30 so that you can get to this thing at 6 a.m. I can do that. It's an ability that I have. So I go to bed the night before the ready mile. I set my alarm just in case. Just in case, like I need it. Usually I don't. And I wake up at 3:30 and I'm like, okay, I'm good. So I go back to sleep. Then I wake up at 4:30. I'm like, okay, I'm good. Go back to sleep. Wake up at 5. I'm like, I'm good. I got 30 minutes left. I can sleep. Go back to sleep. Wake up at 6 a.m. on the dot, and I'm panicking. So I throw my clothes on, get in my, 1999 white RAV4 little box car, speed down to the football field, walk out there at 6:05. And, I show up and there's a senior who was hurt, couldn't practice or run or anything. And he's sitting there and I'm just like, gosh, dang it. And there's a time limit that we had. Like you had to run the ready mile within an allotted amount of time. So I show up 5 minutes late, clock's already going, still beat the time, right? Come back, finish up. I'm like, the 9th person to finish. Okay. I worked on my endurance a lot that summer to be ready for it. I sit down, I'm like, hey, I was late. So what? I finished the thing that, I was supposed to finish in the allotted amount of time. And senior walks over, taps me, goes, hey, man, you got one more because you were late. Okay. You have to hold people accountable in everything. And general managers especially have to do that because you've got, a bunch of scouts, right, who are scouting college players, and then you've got other scouts scouting other NFL teams, and it's important. And I got to be honest, I don't know if Chris Ballard does this or not. But what I do know is that when you lead people, you have to have the ability to hold them accountable, right? And part of that is, they have to respect you in order for that to happen. And the other part of that is, like, if someone doesn't do their job correctly, then there needs to be consequences, just like there were for me, 6 years ago when I showed up 5 minutes late. Okay, you have to hold people accountable. Next, adaptability. Adaptability is wildly important anytime I think you're leading anybody, especially, a football team, because things can happen just kind of on a whim that completely change the outlook of your team. Like, for example, like the Vikings, their general manager hard at work this week, working his butt off because there's no McCarthy and Jordan Addison got hurt and their starting tight end got hurt and two of their corners got hurt. Like the general manager in Minnesota right now is working his butt off trying to adapt because his roster changed quite a bit over the course of a week, right? So the ability to change and adapt and pivot on a dime is important because sometimes things don't go according to plan. For example, your 29-year-old quarterback can retire right before the start of a season. Okay, when things like that happen, you have to be able to reorganize and figure out a plan going forward. I still think that is the biggest knock on Chris Ballard. When things went sideways, right, with Andrew Luck retiring, whether he knew it was coming or not, he didn't have a plan. He didn't adapt. He didn't figure out how to reestablish that there was going to be a future of the Colts organization. Okay, because that is ultimately the goal of the general manager, right? The head coach is very conscious of right now. We got to win right now. Whereas general managers are much more of like, how's the roster going to look in 5 years? Right. And so like there's this constant meshing of that. And I think Chris Ballard got away from that after Andrew Luck retired. It was, here's a Band-Aid quarterback. Okay. That Band-Aid's used. Here's another one. Here's another one. And it wasn't sustainable. The Colts' next general manager, whoever it is, has to be able to adapt on the fly. The next thing, foresight. You have to be able to see things coming down the road. Okay, I've heard the stories of Andrew Luck, and the retiring, and, Chris Ballard probably should have seen that coming. Okay, like you have to have foresight of the bad things that could potentially happen. And that, I think, is one of the most frustrating parts about Chris Ballard not signing Justin Simmons. Like have the foresight to see, like, Nick Cross hasn't been good these last 2 years. What if he's not good? Like, that is a legitimate question that should have been asked in that room. If Nick Cross isn't good and he can't play free safety, what's happening next? Who are we turning to? And the answer can't be a guy that we signed to play linebacker, and that is currently the answer. Okay, you have to have foresight. You have to be able to see down the road and see the possible outcomes that could happen. Right now, is there a world where Nick Cross is great? Sure, I guess. The last 2 years, from what we've seen, it doesn't seem like that's the possible outcome. But hey, maybe it is. You have to have the foresight to see the different things that could happen in the future. And I just don't feel like Chris Ballard has that. Next, this is an obvious one. You have to have a track record of drafting success. Chris Ballard doesn't have a ton of this recently. Okay, now maybe that changed with this draft. I do want to be, positive when I can be. Maybe things change with this draft. Anthony Gould seems to be having a pretty good camp. Okay, had a great return in that first preseason game. Okay, Leatu Latu, he might be a stud. He might be, right? Everything, that we've seen and heard so far points to that being a good draft pick. A.D. Mitchell seems to be doing well. Anthony Richardson, jury's still out on him. We've seen him play 12 quarters. We've seen him throw 84 passes. No one knows if he's going to be good or not. Okay, so the jury's still out on him as well. And like if those four guys hit, then, the narrative will change very quickly on Ballard's ability to draft. I can tell you that much. So that is obviously an important thing. If things don't work out with Chris Ballard, which it doesn't seem like they're going to, then whoever the Colts bring in next Like, they have to have a track record of successfully drafting. And look, you're not going to go 100%. Okay? Because when you draft guys, it's a total crapshoot. You can look at different traits and things, and you can think that a guy's going to be good. But at the end of the day, these guys don't know. They really don't know. The last thing, not the most important. I find it highly important, though. If Chris Ballard doesn't work out and the Colts decide to fire him at the end of the year, whoever they hire next has to have a willingness to work with the current head coach, Shane Steichen. I still think Shane Steichen is one of the 10 best coaches in the NFL. I'm not going to come down off that hill for quite a long time. Okay? The evidence in his resume is there. This guy figures out ways to get quarterbacks to produce, whether it's, Justin Herbert in his rookie year out with the Chargers. Maybe it was the 2 year, or even, the 2 years that he was in Philadelphia coaching up Jalen Hurts, or even last year, taking a guy, Gardner Minshew, who was once again going to be the backup, to Aiden O'Connell, 4th round pick. Yeah, taking that guy and turning him into a viable quarterback option. He got Gardner Minshew kind of paid this offseason. Okay, he did. And the Raiders, they sat back there like, oh, wow, Gardner Minshew played really well last year in Indianapolis. We should bring him in to compete for the starting quarterback job with Aiden O'Connell. And it's like, you're not getting the same guy because Shane Steichen isn't your head coach. Okay, so whoever the Colts hire next to be their general manager, like, they have to be willing to work with Shane Steichen because he's going to be one of the better head coaches in the NFL for a long time. Okay, I'm telling you guys, buy stock now. Okay, me personally, I got a big old mansion on Shane Steichen Island, and I'm not selling any bit of it. Okay, Steichen he's like, this guy can coach. I'm telling you guys. Okay, we've seen it throughout the course of his career in Los Angeles, Philadelphia. We saw it last year. Okay, like, people keep telling me how horrendously bad this Colts roster is. And I tend to agree with the people telling me that. And yet, if Gardner Minshew completes a swing pass, they make the playoffs last year. Okay? So somebody has to be responsible for the 9 wins and the chance at making the playoffs. And if this roster is as bad as everyone keeps telling me, then Shane Steichen is clearly the guy that we have to point to say he's why the Colts found some success last year. He has to be the answer for that. So I can't wait to see what he has cooked up for Anthony Richardson. Once again, seems like Richardson has had a very successful training camp, and hopefully that continues. We are not going to see him play tomorrow. Shane Steichen announced that yesterday, that he's not playing the starters tomorrow, but hopefully on Thursday we should find out. Steichen's playing sometime next week, probably on Tuesday or Wednesday. He usually releases it the day before, so can't wait to hear what Shane Steichen has to say about that next week. I also can't wait to hear what Josh Edwards of CBS Sports has to say. He covers a lot of draft stuff, so he has quite the grasp on the younger players in the NFL. Going to talk to him about the Colts, AFC South, because the AFC South is a pretty young division. May even get into some of the quarterback play. Drake May looked pretty good last night. Made some throws where I was like, I don't think Joe Milton makes that one. So Drake May looked good last night. Can't wait to have Josh Edwards on. Talking Anthony Richardson, Colts, AFC South, rookie quarterbacks, and just some other general NFL news. Once again, Josh Edwards, top of the hour, 5 minutes away. He's joining me live here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. A lot of stuff has been covered today. My heart ripped out by the Colts not signing Justin Simmons despite needing significant help on the back end. But that's okay, though. Hopefully they can figure things out. Anthony Richardson with a couple good joint practices these past couple days. I'm joined now by Josh Edwards of CBS Sports. Josh, what's going on, man?
Hey, not too much. We got our first preseason game last night, of course, now working our way into the second week of the preseason. So regular season is just around the corner.
It really is. I'm so ready for it. Shane Steichen came out yesterday and said that the Colts starters aren't playing on Saturday, which is always an interesting thing because, you know, I enjoy doing draft stuff. You know, I'm not super great at it. I'm wrong a lot.
We all are.
But it's always fun to like watch games and be like, oh, that's so-and-so. I remember when they got drafted in like the 5th round and I was really excited about them and now they're a backup somewhere. Do you have anyone like that where it's like, I know that they're a backup for, you know, fill in the blank team and I'm going to watch them just so I could watch this guy that I liked that came out of the draft?
Yeah, I mean, you know, covering the draft for 5 years at CBS now, you know, you watch all of this film, you get to know their backgrounds, all of this stuff. So when you get to the preseason, it's actually exciting for weirdos like us that, you know, enjoy the draft and get to know all these names and, you know, where they come from and everything like that. So I actually have a pretty strong attachment to just about everybody that gets drafted and then, you know, several undrafted free agents as well. So that's always fun for me to see. But yeah, I actually had to come up with a article idea just so I could write about the players that I had pre-draft crushes on over at cbssports.com. So there's several of those type players out there. Austin Booker with the Bears, Jamari Thrash with the Browns. You know, there's a lot out there. The Colts always seem to have somebody because they've got these, you know, athletic freaks out the wazoo every single year. I was a big fan of Matt Goncalves, the offensive tackle out of Pittsburgh. So, yeah, I mean, every team seems to have one or two of those type of players, and that's why the preseason is fun.
It really is, and I do want to focus on the Colts here for a second. I saw that you wrote an article. Once again, you can find all of Josh's stuff on cbssports.com. You did an all breakout team projection, and you put Anthony Richardson down as your quarterback. Why is that? What is it about Anthony Richardson that makes you think that he could have a big year this next year?
Yeah, I mean, I like Anthony Richardson, his skill set and what he brings to the table. But even before you start discussing that, I have a lot of confidence in Shane Steichen and what he's been able to do on offense. I think that's a great situation for a young quarterback, being able to learn and work with a play caller like Shane Steichen, because he does such a great job of making things easy on your quarterback, especially a young quarterback in the case of Richardson. When you have the dual skill set that he does, being able to run the ball and also having this cannon for an arm, that allows you to do a lot of different things. And if you end up in the wrong situation, you can kind of be pigeonholed into a situation that may not be ideal for you. But landing with Steichen, I think that's the ideal play caller that is going to be able to maximize his skill set. So if he can stay healthy this year and take care of his body, you know, not take these unnecessary hits, I do think that he's a strong candidate to break out.
I really hope you're right. Joined by Josh Edwards, writer for CBS Sports. And I love Steichen. I think that you hit the nail on the head. Like, it's like everyone that I've asked this question to, because there seem to be a lot of people who think that Anthony Richardson could have a really good year this year. It seems to be more about Steichen than Richardson, which is, fine. Like, for most quarterbacks, it's really about the situation. I may or may not have already lost money because I put money on J.J. McCarthy to win Rookie of the Year just because he went to play for Kevin O'Connell. Don't place your bets till after the season starts, people. And so I completely agree with you on that. But when it comes to Anthony Richardson, something that I'm really curious to get your take on is, if he had come out this year, if he had stayed at Florida for an extra year, where would he have ranked amongst your quarterback rankings with a pretty strong quarterback class coming out this year with Caleb Williams and Drake May and Jaden Daniels and all those guys?
Yeah, I mean, it depends, of course, what he would have shown in that final season at Florida, but, just kind of projecting where he was going as the quarterback in Gainesville, looking at the players that came out in this past year's draft, I probably would have had him between J.J. McCarthy and Michael Penix Jr., which, doing the math, I believe that's quarterback 5. Just because he was such a concept coming out of Florida, having that 1 year of experience, not really seeing everything that you needed to see to feel really comfortable. But I like where his upside was more than a Michael Penix Jr. or a Bo Nix. Having said that, if he were to have a breakout season, the way that he very well could have, he would have been taken, higher than that. He probably would have gone before Drake May. He probably would have gone before J.J. McCarthy as well. So for me, when I settled the quarterback rankings, I believe I finished with Caleb number 1, Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, and then Jaden Daniels. But in terms of a skill set and where the NFL would have valued him, I certainly think that he would have been right up there with Jaden, Drake, and Caleb because of his physical skill set. He's incredibly rare in terms of what he can do as an athlete and not just a quarterback. And you take into consideration his raw attributes and what he could possibly become, that's going to be exciting for a lot of teams, which is kind of what has excited me about this potential marriage with Shane Steichen. Yes, accuracy is a little bit of a concern, but I think he does a really good job of reading the field and knowing what he's looking at. So there's reasons for optimism going into year 2, but he probably would have been the 7th quarterback taken in the first round this year.
Okay.
Or 1 of 7, I should say.
Yeah, it's a lot of quarterbacks, man. It's it's insane because, it happens every year. Like the first mock draft comes out and the first quarterback off the board is at 15. But then by the time the draft comes, it's like, no, he's going to go number 1 because that's, obviously an important position. And so, I do think that there's a lot of, I think, excitement for young Colts players this year, especially in this draft class. Like everything that's being said about at.to is people seem to be really excited in the Colts building for him. DeForest Buckner said he could be Nick Bosa. And I was like, whoa, that's really, really high praise. What were your thoughts on at.to coming out of UCLA and what do you kind of expect from him this year?
Yeah, I really liked him. I thought he was the best position to make a quick transition to the NFL. He showed a lot of pass rush skills, a lot of, secondary moves that he could use once his initial rushes stopped. And I think when you look at Dallas Turner and some of the other guys that were taken there in the first round, there's a lot to be excited about. I mean, you like Dallas Turner's athleticism. You like Jared versus power, but I thought at.to kind of gave you the best of both worlds. And he was the most physically ready for the NFL game. So again, I don't remember where he ended up on my rankings, probably number 2 behind Turner. But certainly a player that I felt most comfortable projecting to the NFL because at the very least, I knew that he could provide a high floor for a team. So stepping into that situation with the Colts, who already had a good defensive line and brought that back, added a couple pieces to it, I thought was a really great situation for him because he's not going to be asked to do too much as a rookie. He's going to be able to kind of learn the game at his own speed.
Yeah, I'm excited for him. I know they've been playing him a lot with the 2s, kind of mixing him in with the 1s as well. What about A.D. Mitchell? Because that's a dude who is really athletic, blazing fast, was a guy that some people had in the first round, some people had him going in the second. Where do you stand on the new Colts wide receiver?
Yeah, I think I had him in the first round as well. A player that when you're looking for a potential X wide receiver, somebody that can play on the boundary, create separation, he has that type of skill set. I don't think we saw a finished product at Texas, but again, that's why you're able to get him into the second round. So I thought the Colts got good value there. If he's able to reach his potential, it's going to be a steal. And working with Michael Pittman Jr. and Josh Downs, who I felt very strongly about coming into his own draft class last year. I think the Colts have a lot of really young talent to be excited about at the wide receiver position. Now, if you can get Richardson to stay healthy and continue to progress the way that we think he can, that's a really exciting possibility for fans to kind of watch that young group come together, especially behind an offensive line that I think should only continue to get better.
Joined by Josh Edwards of CBS Sports. You can find all of his articles at cbssports.com. So the AFC South as a whole I think it's the most interesting division because there's a lot of young quarterbacks. There's a lot of question marks. How do you think the AFC South compares to the other divisions in the NFL?
It's one of more mystery, as you kind of allude to, because of the young quarterbacks in the division. I actually talked to, Jacksonville radio here recently too, talking about all the quarterbacks in the division. Will Levis, cannon for an arm, but can he be that consistent weapon for Tennessee? Anthony Richardson, we had a small sample size last year, but it was enough to be encouraged by what he could be moving forward. Trevor Lawrence, former number 1 overall pick. Is this the year that he's going to reach his potential? And then, of course, in Houston, you've got, one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL with C.J. Stroud. So, yeah, as far as just, value of watching on any given Sunday, I think you're going to see some of the most exciting matchups being played in the AFC South. How that translates to divisional strength and, where it stacks up to some of its peers, I don't know yet, because that quarterback play is going to be ultimately what determines that. But I would say that if everything goes well for those 4 quarterbacks, you're talking about one of the stronger divisions in the league. There's some other areas of concern for these teams, of course, some of which is on the defensive side of the ball, more particularly in the secondary. But if the quarterback play is everything that we think it could be, then it's going to be a really competitive division.
Did you expect for C.J. Stroud to be this good this fast?
No, not at all. There were definitely signs that he could be this type of player. He's incredibly accurate, does a good job of working the field, manipulating defenses with his eyes. But if he became the player that he is now, and we knew it, he would have been the number 1 overall selection. I mean, it wouldn't have been Bryce Young.
Yeah.
But it was kind of more of a concept. Ohio State kind of hit him a little bit more than some of the other quarterbacks. So we didn't quite have a total vision of what he would be at the next level. There were certainly signs, of course, but to expect him to be what he was as a rookie, I think, would be a little bit of a stretch, because he had a historic rookie season.
He really did. I know I was really surprised by it. You mentioned Bryce Young there and how, if we'd known that Stroud was going to be this good, he would have gone number 1. Is there I'm trying to figure out how to word this. I think that it's incredibly difficult to grade Bryce Young right now because that Carolina roster is really bad. So how'd you feel about his rookie season? What is how do you kind of grade a guy like that when he ends up on a roster as terrible as Carolina's?
I thought that people were a little bit harsh on him last year. I don't think his accuracy issues were as bad as maybe it was portrayed in social media and the national narrative. Was it fantastic? No, it certainly wasn't by any stretch of the imagination. But, you have to take into consideration the supporting cast. Adam Thielen was his top pass catcher after he had been cast off by Minnesota. And then the play calling, the coaching staff didn't really give him any stability either. They were, of course, out the door after one season. So, it was a tough situation for a rookie quarterback to step into. I think they did make a concerted effort to support him more this offseason, signing 2 massive offensive guards like Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt, trading for Deontay Johnson, drafting Xavier Legette. I think all of that is going to help Bryce Young, but at the end of the day, he's always going to have those physical limitations because of his lack of ideal height. Can he rely on what we saw at Alabama, which was the processing, his ability to escape the pocket, extend plays? And will Deontay Johnson be a guy that allows him to make those big plays down the field late in downs? If all of it comes together, I think Bryce Young can still have a good career. But last year, I think, was certainly concerning just for what you would expect from a number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, I completely agree with that assessment. Joined by Josh Edwards, writer for CBS Sports, covers a lot of NFL stuff, a lot of NFL draft stuff as well. And if I'm just going to ask you about all the rookie quarterbacks from last year, I have to ask you about Will Levis as well, who had an interesting time in Tennessee. I think a lot of people are jumping on the Levis bandwagon because we saw the comeback that he made on Monday Night Football against the Dolphins last year. I'm a little more hesitant. I remember watching him at Kentucky. He just felt a little too wild, if that makes sense. What are your thoughts on Will Levis and kind of what can we expect from him in year 2?
Yeah, it's baited optimism. We knew he had a cannon for an arm when he came into the league. We saw that on display several times last year, targeting DeAndre Hopkins down the field. But I think because of what he did and the success that he maybe even in a smaller sample size, we kind of lose sight of the fact that he also had a terrible supporting cast. It was a terrible offensive line. DeAndre Hopkins was of course good. I mean, you would certainly be happy to get what you got from him at that age, but they didn't have really many other targets to go to in that offense outside of Derrick Henry and Tajay Spears. So seeing what they did this offseason, signing Calvin Ridley, drafting 2 offensive linemen in the first round over the past 2 years, Peter Skoronski and J.C. Latham, that offensive line should be improved. And then you hire one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL in Bill Callahan. I think that unit should be much improved. And if that unit is much improved, then it's going to give Levis more time to make decisions in the pocket. One thing that I was encouraged by that maybe I hadn't seen as much of at Kentucky was just a little bit more touch on the football. I thought he did show a little bit more understanding of when to regulate his throws. So he's still got the big arm, but I think being able to work the short and the intermediate of the field at least gives me reasons for optimism moving forward.
Okay, fair enough. I'm very interested to see how he looks because I do think that there's a lot of, I think, correlation between him and Richardson, where it's like these kind of bigger, strong-armed, athletic quarterbacks that we're waiting to see if they develop into, legitimate franchise quarterbacks. So It'll be interesting. Last question for you, Josh, and I'll let you go. How much better have the Falcons got in these last 2 days, adding Justin Simmons and bringing in Matthew Judon?
They'll be improved, at least for the upcoming season. Trading away a 3rd-round pick for that team, I think, is maybe something that I wouldn't have necessarily done. I don't know. It's tough to figure out that team because Kirk Cousins, is probably going to be available for the entirety of the season. But how far are they going to be able to go with this current roster? You'll probably make the NFL playoffs. Maybe you sneak out a win, but I just don't know if I see the ceiling for them to be trading away future draft assets. I think that it was the right decision to bring in a Justin Simmons and bring in a Matthew Judon. I think those players upgrade the defense for this current year. But I just kind of wonder what it looks like for the future moving forward.
How big of a deal is a 3rd-round pick, though? Because I feel like 3rd-round picks are, sometimes obviously you can hit a home run, but are you really going to draft a player better than Matthew Judon, even if he is a little bit older?
No, it's more about the timeline. Again, if you feel like Michael Penix Jr. is your future and he's somebody that can help you win a Super Bowl in the future, and I don't necessarily think that they are a threat to win the Super Bowl for this coming season, even with Kirk Cousins and what they've done. on the defensive side of the ball. So for me, I think having that third round pick and a potential swing at a player that can help Penix potentially win the Super Bowl down the road is more valuable than maybe giving you a 0.1% chance improvement of winning the Super Bowl this coming season. It's just a matter of how you view the short term versus the long term, and I just think that having those future assets would be more beneficial for that team.
Yeah, that makes sense. Totally in agreement with that. The Arthur Blank thing's interesting because he's not exactly a young guy, and the Falcons haven't really been good during the time he's owned them. I think he just wants to have a good football team before he passes the team on. But it's an interesting thing. Josh, thanks for your time, dude. You were great, man.
Yeah, of course, anytime.
All right, man. I will talk to you later. See you. That is Josh Edwards of CBS Sports. You can find all of his stuff at cbssports.com. Does a lot of NFL draft stuff. Already has like a top 50 big board up there on cbssports.com if you want to get a look at some of the better collegiate players, because college football, 13 days away, baby. We are not far from it. When we come back here in about 4-ish minutes, Justin Simmons signed with the Falcons. I'm not very happy about it. We'll get into that when we come back here in 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to tune in. Man, what a show. Josh Edwards in that last segment. Great time having him on, talking about some of the younger players in the NFL, expectations for at.to, what he expects from Anthony Richardson in year 2. Blast having him on. Zack Gray, it's Friday. He's joining me next segment, 11:40-ish, right? He's going to have bets. I think his algorithm is finally done. We'll be able to talk to him about that. He also texted me. He's got thoughts on my backwards hat, upside down, backwards visor take. So I'm sure we'll get into that as well. But Justin Simmons did not sign with the Colts. I am not surprised, but I am disappointed. Okay? Like, 1 year, $8 million. Justin Simmons signs with the Falcons. And I just, oh my gosh. A guy who could have stepped in and helped the Colts immediately. Chris Ballard sat back and was like, nah, we don't need that guy. We're good. We're all right. We like our guys. We love our guys. We love Nick Cross, even though we got 2 years worth of film that doesn't exactly show good football. You know, we like our guys. We love our guys. You know, even though Jalen Jones and Dallas Flowers aren't exactly having the best time at training camp, they had a little bit of success yesterday, to be fair, but weird weather, you know, probably favors the defense more than anyone else. But hey, we're trying to be positive, but man, that secondary is really bad. And they really could have used Justin Simmons. And look, 1 year, $8 million, that's not exactly a huge contract. It's not. Like, there's not a world in which you could convince me that Ballard couldn't have done 1 year, $10 million. If they have somewhere between $24 and $25 million in cap space available. Like, why are we prioritizing not spending money towards winning? Okay? Like cap space is the most overrated thing. It is. Okay? Like, you don't need cap space. You need wins. Okay, I sit back every offseason and I watch teams like the Saints and the Dolphins, who were pressed up against the cap, maneuver contracts and figure out ways to create more cap space. Okay, like, there are ways around it. And when I sit back and I look at what's happening in the NFL and I look at what the Falcons are doing, they've been hyper aggressive these past couple days, trading a 3rd-round pick for Matthew Judon. You know, going out and signing Justin Simmons for a cheap contract. 1 year, $8 million is not a lot of money. It's not. And because of that, the Falcons are going to be good. They are the best team in their division. They have the best roster in their division. And so they're gonna make the playoffs. They're gonna win their division. They're going to host a home playoff game if Kirk Cousins can stay healthy. And a large part of that is because they have been aggressive. That is the way forward. And Chris Ballard just seems to not understand that. Okay, the Colts fans have put up with this for the last 8 years. And I'm sorry to inform you that you're going to have to put up with it for potentially quite a bit longer. It's like, Jonathan, what are you talking about? If Anthony Richardson's good, Chris Ballard's not going anywhere. Okay? Chris Ballard's tenure in Indianapolis is directly tied to Anthony Richardson. If Anthony Richardson is a good player, Chris Ballard isn't going anywhere. Okay? He's going to be here, and we're going to continue to sit back and watch him sit on his hands and not be aggressive. And that's how you win. Okay, every single day, GMs and coaches should ask themselves the same question. How do we get better? How do we get better? That is the question that should be asked every single day. And I am convinced that the Colts, front office, Chris Ballard, doesn't ask that question. Because if he did, then the answer would have been, probably, an upgrade of free safety. Oh, there's Justin Simmons. Let's go get that guy. Okay, like something has to happen at some point to convince me that Chris Ballard wants to win. Because I'm not convinced of it at this point. Okay, I got to be honest. I think he likes having the long hair look. I think he's going for some sort of like Fabio thing, and maybe he wants to not win the Super Bowl so that he can grow his hair out super duper long. Maybe that's what he really wants. Because this is getting ridiculous. It is. Like, at some point, you have to do something in free agency. At some point, you have to address the needs that you have outside of the NFL draft. Because let's be honest, first round guys and second round guys are usually able to come in and have some sorts of positive impact. Okay, first round players and second round players are usually able to come in and play. After that, you're looking at developmental guys. You're looking at guys that have tools, and you're like, okay, if we can develop this, then maybe in 2 or 3 years, they'll be able to play. That's what you're looking at. Whereas free agency is like, this guy could come in and play right now. Yeah, I want that guy. And that should have been the reaction to Justin Simmons, because we've seen Nick Cross these past couple years. And it hasn't been good. And that's a nice way to put it. Okay. And we've heard stories and we've seen videos of wide receivers breaking off these corners and creating, 5 yards of separation. It's like, how can you watch that day after day after day and be like, yeah, we like our guys? I mean, unless you want to not get stops, because that is where we're headed. And I know what's going to happen. We're going to blame Gus Bradley, and I'm not. Okay, if the Colts defense is bad this year, if the Colts pass defense is bad this year, because I do think that the Colts have legitimate players in the front seven. I'm not the biggest EJ Speed or Zaire Franklin fan, but, they're solid players. And the defensive line is very deep. Like, if the Colts give up a ton of passing yards this year, I'm not putting it on Gus Bradley. Not doing it. Putting it on Chris Ballard, right? Because he is the one who has decided that apparently, these Colts secondary pieces are good enough. And I'm here to tell you that they are not good enough. And it's frustrating for me because, I come out here, I make takes, I make big swings. And when it comes to Shane Steichen, in order to get this team to the playoffs this year, they're going to have like a top five offense in the NFL, because this secondary is so horrendously bad. Horrendously bad. Okay, like, the Colts are going to have probably the worst secondary in the NFL. And I just don't know how, as a general manager with $25 million in cap space sitting there at your disposal, I just don't know how you can sit there, look at that money, and be like, "Nah, we're good. We don't need to spend that on a guy in Justin Simmons who's capable of being an all-pro free safety. No, we don't need to do that. Instead, we're going to sit on our hands, and we're going to watch Nick Cross give up a ton of yards, and we're going to give up a ton of points." And it's hard to win when you have a general manager that lacks aggressiveness. The 49ers, aggressive, traded for Christian McCaffrey. The Rams, aggressive, traded for Jalen Ramsey, traded for Matthew Stafford the year that they won the Super Bowl. The best teams are aggressive. Look at the Miami Dolphins. Okay, they were bad, and they were like, we got to figure out how to help Tua. Well, let's draft a wide receiver with our 7th overall pick, and let's trade for the best wide receiver in football in Tyreek Hill. The Texans, aggressive. They won the division last year, and they're like, that's not good enough. Let's go get Stephon Diggs. Let's go be better. And the way forward, the way to improve, the way to get better is to be aggressive and in going out and trying to add better players. And Chris Ballard, for whatever reason, he doesn't want to do that. He wants to hang out, sit on his hands, and, hope that Nick Cross develops. And I'm telling you, I don't think that that's going to happen. But hey, if it doesn't happen, at least we've got a former linebacker that can play free safety. Yay. Can't wait to see how that one goes. Colts playing tomorrow at home against the Arizona Cardinals. No starters will play, according to Shane Steichen, what he said after practice yesterday. Going to see a lot of the backups. That'll be interesting. Speaking of interesting, it's Friday. Almost 11:40. Zack Gray joins me coming up here in 4 minutes.
Welcome back to The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. It's 11:38 on a Friday, which means the one and only Zack Gray at ZG the Grapevine, if you want nothing but winning bets, joins me. Zach, what's going on, man?
Jay Smith, I am so happy to meet with you this morning, and it's just good to hear your voice again. A whole week without you.
Hey, man, it's great to hear yours too. You had some big news happen. You're planning a wedding, which is awesome. Congratulations. How is that going?
Well, I proposed Sunday, and I was expected to have my entire guest list completed on Monday. So, also, I know you went through this process. You know, I know I'm supposed to kind of stay out of the way, let her do her thing. But like, even when I do get asked, I give the wrong answer. So I'm not sure why she even asked me.
Dude.
So like, she knows already what she wants to do. Asking me makes her feel better, I guess. But there's no shot she's listening to me.
Yeah, welcome. You sound like every guy ever that's ever gotten married. That's the way it goes. You just have to, affirm whatever she's saying. That's really all that it is. It's honestly a great test for marriage because that's what part of it is. That's not what all of it is. But
she asked me what theme what we wanted, and you know me, I'm a
Ohio State.
I'm a jokey. Yeah, you saw that. I'm a jokey guy. Like, I keep it light. You know, I'll be serious when I need to, but she asked me what theme, and I said Ohio State. And you would have thought that I called off the wedding.
Oh, that's brutal. No, I mean, I don't know, Amelia and I, we made a lot of decisions together, surprisingly. But she was like, like the theme, like that was all her. The venue was mostly her. Like all the big stuff she decided. But then like the frustrating part is when they come to you with the small things that guys just tend to not really care about. Like, hey, what kind of flowers should we put on the table? I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know why you're asking me that question. You should ask me what kind of cake we should get. That's the question you should ask me. But anyway, dude, super happy for you. Cannot wait for the wedding. You asked for my address, so I'm assuming that I'm gonna get an invite. So, you know,
you were an automatic qualifier.
Let's go, big time. Can't wait for that.
Conference.
You said what?
I said you won your conference. You're an automatic qualifier.
Let's go. Come on now. So I've been wanting to ask you, and we talked about it a little bit off the air. You hadn't heard of it yet, but so for the listeners who don't know, I met Zach in college, my freshman year playing baseball. You were half player, half coach. I think that's kind of the best way to put it.
I was on my Pete Rose.
There you go. And so Zach loves baseball. We definitely share a love for that. And for those of you who haven't heard, Major League Baseball has floated this new rule out there to require starting pitchers to throw at least 6 innings unless they give up 4 or more runs, they get hurt, or they throw over 100 pitches. Zach, upon hearing that, what's kind of your reaction to that potential rule?
I think it brings back a major part of the allure and the interest in baseball. Like, think about when we were kids, about like the players we talked about: Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez, Roger Clemens, like workhorse, Clayton Kershaw earlier in his career, like workhorse starters. And like the idea that you give a ball every 5th day, you give a ball to a guy and he's going 7, 8, 9. We don't have that anymore. We don't have those crazy records with innings are down, everything's down. So like kind of structuring it this way gives that nostalgia back, but it also kind of makes the game a little more digestible for the average fan, knowing that these starters are going to go and they're not going to bring in 6 relievers I've never heard of, and not going to make 16 roster moves every month to like move relievers up and down, minor leagues, major leagues. I love it. I've always thought this should be a rule. Okay. I like the rule. I would make a slight tweak, but part of why I like it is because I think it's very hard to make, batters stars in Major League Baseball, because you see them like 4, maybe 5 times a game, and then you may see them make a play or 2 out in the field. Whereas pitchers, I'm seeing them for 7 innings, hopefully, and that just hasn't been the case. The average length
of a starting pitcher's time on the mound for a game is 5 1/3 innings. That's way too short. Like it needs to be longer. I'd make a slight tweak though, because you know how rigid and prickly baseball fans can be. I think that instead of requiring 6 innings, they should kind of follow the NBA's lead, where the NBA had a major problem with load management and not getting guys to play. So they're like, you can sit out games if you want, but if you don't play 65 games, you don't qualify for any awards. I think Major League Baseball should do something similar, like starting pitchers have to throw 225 innings or whatever you want the number to be to qualify to win the Cy Young or some other award like that.
I like that. I like that a lot. I don't know what that number is, and I don't know if it's innings pitched. I don't know if there's a pitch limit. It could be as simple as like a pitch floor or whatever, but like have those run totals with it. Like, so you have to throw at least 75 pitches or 80 pitches unless you give up 4 runs or something like that. Like, I don't know. It does seem like it does need a little tweak here and there, but the concept behind it, like, sign me up every day of the week.
I am completely with you on that. Once again, joined by my guy, Zack Gray. Follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine. Football season's almost here. He's going to be pushing out bets, and I promise you're going to want them. The algorithm's done, right?
It is pretty much done. Yeah, I mean, when I sent you that tweet the other day with kind of a little sneak preview, that was my first like volume 1 of completed. It's completed. But then, as these weeks go on, sometimes there's injuries, there's things like that I'll tweak and adjust. And, right before that season starts, the week of, that's when that final, here's what we're rolling with this year. That's when that model comes out. So it's done it's done in nature. But as more information comes out, injuries, things like that, it'll get tweaked here and there. And then that final version will be available right before games start.
I can't wait. You can find his Patreon where he posts all of his picks. You can find that in his Twitter profile at ZG the Grapevine. Head over there, check that out. Week zero
and week 1 are free. They're free.
Oh, so let's go.
On Twitter, I'll be posting all my college football plays for week 0 and week 1 for free on my Twitter. So drop a follow, and then if I'm good, if you like what you're seeing, head over to Patreon. $15 a month. 1 bet covers that. I think I can win you 1 bet. So I think it's a great deal.
Okay, there you go. Was I right in my prediction? Because I know you put out a line, and my guess for it was SMU at Nevada. Was that correct? I never found out.
It was actually Florida State, Georgia Tech.
That was my other guess. I didn't know. But hey, SMU, watch out. Sleeper team there. I think they're actually going to be pretty good this year.
The projected line that I have now is like right spot on with the Vegas line. And when I start to see that, like, I've had a lot of games so far, a lot of these games so far are kind of in line with Vegas lines. And that's when I kind of feel like I feel like I'm in my zone, because then those discrepancies really pop out. You don't want to be crazy away from Vegas because they know what they're doing, right? They know better than anyone how this works. So if you're kind of matching up, oh, I see a value here, boom, strike, that type of thing. So when I see that, I'm feeling good.
Okay, sounds good. Once again, follow Zach on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine for all those picks. Speaking of Twitter, your boy went viral, and I know you had thoughts on it, and I'm very curious what they are.
Yeah. First of all, like, I feel like you knew what you were doing. Can we admit that?
Here's what I thought was going to happen. I thought I'd ruffle a few feathers. I didn't think that it would get the traction that it did, though. If that makes sense. Like I figured some people would be upset. I figured I'd get some, this is the dumbest thing that I've ever heard. Like, kind of figured I'd get some of that. Didn't think that, 260,000 people, however many people it is, would end up seeing it.
So this is my perspective so this is me trying to enter into the mind of Jay Smith here. When you tweet that out, you only believe that like a little bit, literally. Like you are with the visor, like you believe the idea around it. You want the young quarterback to command the locker room, command respect,
Yes.
Be a leader, all of those qualities that aren't necessarily tied to the visor. You use the visor as a conduit to make an overall point about how you want to see Anthony Richardson move this season. But you also knew if you framed it that way, that it was going to go, that people were going to get opinionated.
Yes, that's exactly right. Because I think that you would agree with me. Like, and look, if you go look at the comments, it's a lot of like, well, what about Tom Brady? And he's got a backwards hat on when he's in Tampa Bay. It's like, well, that dude's won more Super Bowls than any other franchise. So I think he can do what he wants. The whole point of it is, like you said, like young quarterbacks, especially when we still have questions, should do everything that they can to appear as a franchise quarterback. And because you have a job outside of the sports gambling stuff. Like if you walked in to your boss's office for your job interview in a backwards and upside down visor, I'm going to say that you probably wouldn't have gotten hired. And that was kind of more of my point.
Yeah. And I think that you did your job really well.
Thank you.
And I know you well enough to know what you were meaning. And I think that obviously I didn't have a problem with it, but some of the comments on there were like, can you think for more than one sentence? Like, this does not mean that he has any bias towards someone or whatever the case may be. Like, I hate the people that just are angry immediately without even thinking. Like, people disagreed with you and they were actually like, yeah, I think this is dumb and here's why. Other people are like, I hate you. You never deserve to tweet again. Like, it's like, can we stop? Like, any person that understands how sports works, understands the message behind it. And if you're this mad and replying, he got you and did exactly what he wanted to do. Like, that's how I thought about it.
Yeah. And you're pretty much spot on, which isn't a surprise. You wouldn't be on the show if you weren't usually spot on.
But I love it. That is the essence of me as a sports fan. So I also, me, I'm that same way. Like, I'll say something that's like kind of wild, but I'll make sure it's based in reality and truth. And that's why I think we mesh well together, because we can kind of toe that line between being ridiculous, but also being like, well, actually they got a point.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. Once again, joined by my good buddy, Zack Gray, professional sports gambler. You can find all of his picks for the upcoming football season in his Twitter bio, linked to his Patreon at ZG, the Grapevine. So I'm ready for football season. I have to talk to you about Ohio State, because there's a decent amount of Ohio State fans kind of in the area, because Columbus is only 2 hours away. I'm not trying to poke the bear here. I'm genuinely curious. What happens if Ryan Day and this loaded roster lose to Sharon Moore in Michigan this year?
I don't exactly know what happens. There's a new AD, and I haven't really gotten a good read on how he kind of operates or how he wants to operate at Ohio State. I would just say that it would be the hottest seat any Ohio State coach has had in my lifetime, that in regards to on-field results. And it would be something that I have never seen before in my life as a conscious sports fan. Losing 4 times to Michigan, having all of these expectations and not beating your rival. I can imagine it's the hottest seat ever. I don't know if he gets fired. And, let's say he loses to Michigan and then lays an egg in the playoff, then he's done. I would say he's probably toast. He's got the best roster Ohio State's ever had, in my opinion, top to bottom. He's got one of the best offensive minds in the last 25 years being his offensive coordinator and solely focusing on offense. He's got the best defense in the country, and one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. James Laurinaitis is his linebackers coach. Tim Walton, the best secondary coach in America. There are no excuses. And I know that's said at Ohio State a lot. Sometimes there are small things that can happen at a program like Ohio State. It's not always perfect, but if there ever was a perfect season where you had everything aligned top to bottom, it was this year. So he has to do something with it.
I completely agree with you. I'll be even, more honest with you. If I had to make a bet today on who's going to win the national title this year, I would pick Ohio State in less than a heartbeat. Because you're right, like they're absolutely loaded. The coaching staff is good. Ryan Day, even though he hasn't won the big one yet, like the dude's still one of the best 5 coaches in all of college football. So I'm excited to watch Ohio State. I'm excited for college football season in general. So many just great matchups are going to happen this year, which is nice. I don't have to focus on Arkansas every week. I won't go into a season of depression. It's going to be great.
Games are more. There's more meaningful games, and I know I come in here begging the drum on that every week. But I'm trying. There's someone listening right now that's like, "Oh, I hate the 12-team playoff." Well, let me tell you what, buddy. I ain't going anywhere, and there's more meaningful games, and you better get used to it, bub.
I love you, man. You crack me up, dude. Yeah, I'm with you. Like, conference expansion is a good thing. It's also been a thing that's happened throughout the entire history of college football. Like, this is the second big one we've had, I know, in my lifetime. And so, like, this is just kind of the way that college football is. That's the direction that it's heading in, and change isn't always a bad thing. I think that's kind of my biggest thing heading into this. Like, let's at least see what this looks like before we get upset.
Yeah, 100%.
But anyway, that's my time. Look at that, man. We're getting out right on time. That never happens. ZG, you are the best. One more time, tell the people where they can find all the picks and the price and everything like that.
At ZG, the Grapevine on Twitter. Week 0 and week 1, every college football game, I'll have the projected score, the projected spread, the projected total for every single game on there. If you like what you see, click the link on my bio to my Patreon. $15 a month gets you all of the NFL picks, all of the college picks. So, it pays for itself. I promise you I'll pay for it with my betting expertise. So go check it out when the season starts.
Thanks for your time, ZG.
See you, bro.
See ya. That is my guy, Zack Gray. Follow him on Twitter, at ZG, the Grapevine. That's going to do it for the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Colts play tomorrow. No starters. I'll be back Monday, 10 to noon. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way here in 4 minutes.